Now that it's September, the Arizona Diamondbacks need to call up Jordan Lawlar and Devison De Los Santos. We hopped on with Milliard Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks to talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster, and thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're probably part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. I talked about it in the open. The Arizona Diamondbacks are so close to making the wild card this year. And if they want to improve this roster, they need to fix the offensive production from the left side of the infield. We hopped on with Milliard Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks to talk about calling up Jordan Lawlar and Devison De Los Santos. Enjoy.
Now, without further ado, to talk about all the D-backs youngsters, the rookies, the minor leaguers, and of course, Jordan Lawlar, we got to talk to the man who knows it all, Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I am great. This is the best time of the year because you get to bring all the kids up and they can still be Rookie of the Year next year. So we love it. This is tons of fun, and I'm excited to talk about, is Jordan Lawlar going to get the call? That's the big question here.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do with you today, Lindsay, and ask that question, because I kind of have this idea, because I think over the last couple of months, I mean, even with September being tomorrow, I guess at the time of people listening to this podcast, or I guess today, we've seen, teams like the LA Angels call up dudes that we just saw from this past draft, right? Yeah. You have the Zach Netos of the world who drafted last year already called up. And it seems like the De La Cruzes and all these guys spend maybe 12 months, if that 6 to 18 months of minor leagues before they're getting called up. And I want to know, is it time for Jordan Lawlar to get that promotion as well? Because the D-backs are fighting for a wild card spot. And listen, a guy like Nick Ahmed, he swings at a lot of bad pitches, Lindsay. It's not like he's doing a lot for the D-backs offensively. So if a guy like Jordan Lawlar, who we already seen a little bit on the AAA level with the Reno Aces, already start to make a little impact with them, 283 average, 854 OPS in just 12 games, small sample size, but with so many big implications down the stretch for the D-backs, is it time for Jordan Lawlar to get that promotion?
I think it's entirely defensible to call him up, right? Because defense isn't the problem. You're gonna get defense from Geraldo Perdomo. You're gonna get defense from Nick Ahmed, but it's offense on the left side of the infield, both shortstop and third base. And Jordan Lawlar has not played anywhere but shortstop in his minor league career. He's never made a start at third or second or even logged an official inning. But if you plug him in at shortstop, you now have the ability to move other guys around. And to me, there's some things to be a little bit worried about in the profile, but it's also really small sample size. And at this point, what's it going to hurt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because my question is, what are you worried about? Because I have to weigh my options and who is Jordan Lawlar fighting against, right? Okay. Because you just said, with shortstop, that's basically been his position his whole career. And it's if that's the case, I'm probably not playing Nick Ahmed or someone at third base. So if it's Jordan Lawlar versus Nick Ahmed, and they both probably give you the same, level defensively, I know Jordan Lawlar has at least a ceiling offensively, because I know what Nick Ahmed is going to do for me at the plate. It's going to be a negative player at the plate. Jordan Lawlar, I don't know what he's going to be, but at least theoretically, I can bet on an upside with Jordan Lawlar. So if I'm going to bet on one of these two guys to actually succeed and make a bigger impact down the stretch, I'm going to probably ride with Jordan Lawlar. But if you had to hesitate as to calling him up right now, what would you say the weaknesses that you see in his game are?
Okay, so it's very small sample size because he's, like you said, AAA, he's not been there that long, but that's where we have StatCast data from. He has seen, as of time of recording, so not counting Thursday night's games, he has seen 221 pitches in AAA. He's batting .357 on fastballs, okay? Contact percentage of 84%. He doesn't chase them a lot. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. 9% swing and strike. When he sees a fastball, he hits it. Great. Off-speed pitches. He's batting .333. 20% chase, a little bit more, but 80% contact. He's fine with it. Breaking pitches, he's batting .083. He does not chase them 14.3% of the time is his chase numbers. So he's good at recognizing breaking pitches. He doesn't swing at them, but when he does swing, he doesn't hit them. And specifically, when you break it down into individual pitches, in AAA, Jordan Lawlar has not hit a slider this year. And so there's a little bit of me that I'm like, okay, it's probably right to question how would it go if you call him up. But then at the same time, this is an incredibly small sample. This is 221 pitches. And so, like, is this just a fluke? Is this just something where they see, and I've talked to minor leaguers who do this, they see an opposing prospect come up who's a top 50 prospect. He's a hot name. What's the natural instinct as a pitcher? I'm going to grab my fastball and just blow it by this dude. I am not going to let him get a hit off of me. And so maybe he's just not seeing a lot of breaking pitches. Maybe he's just not seeing a lot of sliders. That's why it doesn't show there's a hit there. So bring him to the major league level. You know that defensively he's going to be just as good as anybody else that you have there. But offensively, the ceiling is higher, but we don't know where the floor right now is because all we have is this small sample size noise, and we don't know how true this is or not.
Yeah, and I've seen Nick Ahmed with 20,000 pitches. He can't hit any of them. Slider, fastball, breaking, it don't really matter. So it's like I could put Jordan Lawlar at shortstop, and then maybe I do a Perdomo, Evan Longoria, little third base split, platoon action because Perdomo is that switch hitter. So maybe all of a sudden Lawlar's like essentially your everyday shortstop. I don't know if you want to commit that many, minutes or innings to Lawlar at this stage of his career, but he also just provides so many other tools and skills that, like, maybe he can't hit right away at the plate, but if he's still a guy that could get on base with how the D-backs philosophy is when it comes to base running and creating chaos and being aggressive, like Jordan Lawlar seems like another speedster, another dude. Like, I don't know where he ranks in the StatCast. Like, can you speak more to how fast Jordan Lawlar is?
I mean, it's definitely at least plus speed, but when you watch Jordan Lawlar, he's very, very good at knowing when to take the chance and when not. And so it's something where he gets really good reads off of not just pitchers as far as steals, but also going first to third on a base hit, things like that. He's very, very good at getting the read and making the correct decision. And this is already a Diamondbacks team with Corbin Carroll that's very, very aggressive on the base paths. I feel like Jordan Lawlar gives you another aspect of that because it's plus speed and just the short range quickness. He gets up to speed really quickly and he can move when you get him going. I mean, I've seen him score from first on a base hit in the corner, things like that. I feel like it's an ad. If it's me, I'm going to do it because as long as he doesn't get 130 at-bats in the regular season, he's not going to lose rookie eligibility. And so next year, he can still have that Rookie of the Year campaign. And I legitimately think he is good enough to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year after a full season. It's just the only question I have is this breaking pitch thing small sample size noise, or is this just like, we know that he's really good with velocity. We know that he's never really had huge strikeout issues. Is this just something where he got to AAA, maybe he saw a couple really good breaking pitches and he hasn't hit them yet? Is it just small sample size? I don't know.
Yeah, and let's get him on the major league level and see which weaknesses translate. And then we get that small sample size, with Arizona the last 20 games of the season. And then the coaches can work with him through the offseason after seeing him on the major league level. Give Jordan Lawlar that experience of also playing in big, high-stake games down the stretch of your rookie season. Because even though the D-backs didn't play in high-stake games last year, I do think it was important that Corbin Carroll got called up and he had a little cup of coffee with the D-backs and at least got to be acclimated, get to be around the players and the coaching staff every day. So I do think stuff like that helps these youngsters when they first get called up.
There is nothing as valuable as that 20-game sample at the end of the season, where you have 20 games of high-level data where you can see this is how they did against every type of pitch. This is how pitchers attacked them. This is how teams work to hold them on base at first. And it's not 100% true for every year, but oftentimes when you go back and you look, those guys who are in the Rookie of the Year conversation in their debut years, they got a cup of coffee the year before. And so you look at them and that's where they learned, here's where I'm good, here's where I'm struggling. Now I have an off season to fix it. And the teams that don't do a good job of introducing those guys up at the end of a year to get them a test, those are also the teams that don't typically have Rookie of the Year candidates. And I'm screaming in my head New York Yankees because they called up Oswald Peraza last year. They had him on the roster for 30 days. He played like 8 games. And they turn around this year, he wasn't ready for a major league job and got sent down. So that's why I think it's so important. Make Jordan Lawlar, make the call on Friday the 1st. Call up Jordan Lawlar.
Yeah, I think every D-backs fan would be absolutely ecstatic. We got Corbin Carroll, Jordan Lawlar in the lineup. Like, the future is here once that promotion gets called. So I would love to see that for both D-backs fans, and I think it would also just overall help this D-backs team down the stretch. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. It can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. I love FanDuel for the same game parlay when the D-backs are playing and when the D-backs are rolling. I like to take the D-backs money line, Corbin Carroll double, and a Zach Gallen over 6 strikeouts. When all those things hit, I got a little extra dough in my wallet and I'm feeling good. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now we're back here with Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. Just discussed if Jordan Lawlar should get the call up to the D-backs, but we've already seen some other rookies this season get the call up to the Arizona level. Lindsay, there's been a whole bunch of guys, but recently, one guy that has been really impressive for the D-backs who he was on my radar entering the season, but I didn't really think of him of a guy that was going to make a major impact on this D-backs team this season. I didn't even know if he was going to be called up this season because at the beginning of the year, you had the Drake Jamesons and the Ryan Nelsons, and then there was the Pfaatts and the Tommy Henrys. That's not even counting the Corbin Carrolls in your lineup. Like, there were so many other guys, rookies, youngsters to watch. And then like halfway through the season with the D-backs going in through this prolonged slump, injuries, bullpen guys struggling, the D-back called up a little guy named Slade Cecconi. I've been calling him the wrong name for months on this podcast. Finally got the pronunciation right this past week. But in 21 innings pitched, 3 starts, a bunch of appearances out the bullpen as well, 2.57 ERA. He's not blowing away guys, only 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he does not give up a lot of walks. Really strong command, 0.905 whip. Lindsay, what can you tell me about Slade, and how did you project him on a major league level before seeing what he's been able to do with Arizona recently?
So my whole question when it came to Slade, and I've been saying his last name is Cecconi the whole time, so yeah, I'm right there with you.
Okay.
It's something where we saw him. He was hurt when they drafted him, right? Mm-hmm. Coming out of Miami, he had like a triceps injury, things like that, and in the minors, it felt like he was held back by his fastball, right? And it's something where the fastball sat around 94 miles an hour last year. You look this year, it's kind of the same, but he's able to work with the fastball and the slider now. And the big thing, and the difference in him and Brandon Pfaadt is what the fastball movement is. Brandon Pfaadt hasn't been able to get that fastball to not be dead straight. Yeah. Slade Cecconi has movement on the fastball. And so the fastball slider combination work really well for him. Now, right now, the curveball isn't working that well. The curveball's been hit a little bit. He hasn't thrown a bunch of them, but I think the batting average against the curveball is like 429.
Yeah, it is.
But outside of that, he's able to keep the fastball off of the heart of the plate. He gets a ton of swing and miss with the slider, like over 30% whiff. Mm-hmm. And so mixing those two together, the curveball, the changeup, it feels like he's still a little bit in danger against a lefty because he doesn't throw that slider and he brings that curveball out, and he hasn't thrown a changeup to a righty yet. He's just throwing, fastball, curveball, changeup. He loses his best pitch. But I've been really impressed with how he's been able to get the fastball to move more and how he's been able to locate it. And then the big thing, and that's another issue that he has, that Brandon Pfaadt has, is when Slade misses, he doesn't miss over the heart of the plate. And so even when one of these does get hit hard, like the slider, it's usually outside to it's usually inside to a righty. And so even when he misses with it, it's hard for them to get a barrel on it and pull it for a home run. Unlike Brandon Pfaadt, who when he misses with it, it gets destroyed.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing that I've noticed is Slade doesn't make those big mistakes, like you said, over the middle. He's not leaving up that curveball meatball that Mad Bum used to do so often, or now that we're seeing Brandon Pfaadt with that fastball, just sometimes that fastball just hanging a little bit too much in that upper zone. And was that something that you were concerned with Brandon Pfaadt when he was a minor leaguer? Because look, I think Brandon Pfaadt's starting to kick up a little bit toward the end of the season. It feels like he's starting to work through some of those struggles. And we do see it, like some of these games, you can see why he was such a highly touted guy. You can see him rack up those strikeouts in some of these games and put away these batters. But then also in those 5 innings where he gets 8 strikeouts, he will also give up 3-4 solo home runs if you're lucky, because if there's anyone on base, he might give up 9 runs in that game. So how concerned were you with the struggles that he had in the minor leagues, and how has it translated so far?
So there's this idea where it's not as bad to miss over the heart of the plate if you're throwing 97, 98 miles an hour, right? Like Dre Jameson, his fastball is pretty straight. It doesn't move a lot horizontally, but he also throws it at 97, 98 miles an hour. Brandon Pfaadt's being at 94. It's something, if you don't have the velocity, you have to have the movement and the location. And like Brandon Pfaadt's sweeper is a really good sweeper. It feels like it's one of the better ones, at least like on this team, if not maybe in this. Like it's a really good sweeper, but the thing for him is the fastball doesn't move. And so if somebody sits fastball, they can crush it. And then the changeup, there's a big red spot for the changeup in the heat map. Dead middle changeup. And then even the sinkers tend to drift over the plate versus being off. And so like we knew that there was a little bit of, it wasn't necessarily concern, but we knew you had to walk a fine line with Brandon Pfaadt because he had to have his location on. Because if he didn't, then his misses were going to be hittable. And unfortunately, it feels like his location on the changeup specifically is not on as much as it needs to be.
Yeah, and I feel like some of the D-backs community have kind of gone off the Pfaadt train because of so many of the home runs they've given up, because when he does make a mistake, it just feels so loud and so prominent, as opposed to some of these other pitchers where maybe if they make a mistake, it's just a walk or it's like a double allowed. But when it's Pfaadt, it's like a 3-run shot. It's like a 2-run shot in the 5th inning that just changes the tide and the momentum of the game. So it feels a little bit more important. But long term, are you still in on Pfaadt as like a high-level pitching prospect, maybe number 2, number 3 starter in your rotation?
I'm still in on Pfaadt, and I think a lot of it is just mechanical adjustments. This sounds simple and dumb, and I'm sure someone's talked to him about this. But oftentimes when you see a pitcher who misses, and it always seems to be in the middle of the plate, you can just move them on the pitching rubber. This sounds incredibly stupid, but you can move them from, like, say, the left side of the pitching rubber to the right side of the pitching rubber, just so that if nothing else, they throw the exact same pitch and the miss is in a different location. It could be, I'm not saying it is that, but it could be as simple as something like that to fix. And what I like is the organization just built a new biomechanics lab over at Salt River Fields. And so this feels like this is something that they can figure out and fix because they've invested in the technology and in the education to teach these guys what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm still in on Brandon Pfaadt. In Dynasty, I'd consider going out and trying to get him for super cheap, just simply because if it works, if they figure it out with that biomechanics lab, you've got a mid to upper rotation arm, and he should be pretty cheap on the Dynasty market right now.
Yeah, are there any pitchers that are like, yeah, I can only throw my fastball straight, so depending on who's at the plate, I'm just going to move like 3 inches to the left or right like every other pitch just so I could get in the location I want?
Paul Skeens is actually a guy that has moved around on the pitching rubber from side to side depending on, he doesn't do it per batter, but he does it depending on how he feels in the outing and what where his misses are. And that's something where it became kind of noticeable because in his first minor league start in rookie ball, after being drafted number 1 overall, people saw him do it and they were asking, why is he moving around? And he explained it after the game. And so, like, there are guys who do this. Now, I'm not saying you do it for every pitch or every at batter, that kind of gives away some of what you're doing, but it could be as simple of a tweak as something like that, just to make the misses not be hard of the plate.
Yeah, that seems interesting. I don't know if I've ever really thought about that for these pitchers, like doing a little bachata out there on the mound, just moving back and forth so they could get the location they want. I want to ask you about who you think is a dark horse minor leaguer that could help the D-backs down the stretch run as they try to make it to a wild card spot. But before we get there, first, a quick word from our sponsors. And don't forget to catch every D-backs pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. Now we're back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks crossover with Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsay Crosby breaking down the Pfaadt and the Slade Cecconi's of the world. Always
Cecconi.
always have to like mentally think about in my head how to pronounce his name. I have like 4 different pronunciations up here. But I want to ask you, Lindsay, looking at the Reno Aces like roster, like listen, I'm not sitting here watching Reno Aces tape day to day. I leave that to the experts like you, Lindsay. I'm looking at the stat sheet. I'm seeing like 20 dudes with like an OPS over 800. Everyone in Reno basically crushes from an offensive standpoint because Reno was just such a hitter-friendly ballpark. And
That's Reno.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I mean, of course, you got guys like Jake McCarthy, right, in the minor leagues that could really help this D-backs team down the stretch if it gets going. But who's someone that we haven't seen this year? I don't want a Dominic Fletcher. I don't want a Jake McCarthy. I don't want a Emmanuel Rivera. Who's someone that we haven't seen at all this season that you think could be a dark horse for the D-backs as we enter this postseason run?
This is a pretty dark horse because he's actually in Double-A Amarillo, but Devison De Los Santos.
Okay.
So the production from third base, I took the liberty. The production from third base on this team, the slash line, 240, 306, 356. 10 home runs in 134 games, 47 walks to 136 strikeouts. That's the production from the third baseman collectively on this team when they've been in the thing. You're playing a third baseman you got at the trade deadline from Oakland. But Devison De Los Santos went on the developmental list partway through the season. And so when you look at the full numbers for the full season, it doesn't necessarily look that impressive. But the key date is when he came back from the development list. So if you're not familiar, the development list is a way you can take a guy out of competition for like 2 weeks. And in his case, they sent him down to Salt River Field. They did a lot of biomechanical work with him, and then they unleashed him back on the minors. So going into that stint on the development list, his slash line in 63 games was 207, 269, 308. 7 home runs, not super impressive, struck out 70 times in 63 games. Since he got off of it, it's been 36 games, so just over a month. 315, 340, 571. 9 home runs in 36 games, 19 extra base hits in 36 games. So, better than one every other game. And the big thing has been when you look at his swing, and specifically some of the pre-swing movements that he does, it's a lot simpler. They took a lot of the extra unnecessary movement and the load and everything out of the swing. And so he's better able to stay back on an off-speed pitch, catch up to a fastball, and it's something, his power is stupid ridiculous, right? I mean, it's 70 grade raw power. We've always known the power was there. And in essence, they taught him, you don't have to try so hard to like, if you make contact, it's gonna be a hard hit. You don't have to put in all of that extra stuff in your swing to try to get extra momentum into the ball. Whatever you put in the ball is going to be enough. And so he's absolutely crushed since he got off the development list. And it's something where, yes, you have a little bit of defensive questions at third base. He's not the best defender at third, but if you're calling up a really good shortstop to play defense next to him in a Jordan Lawlar, then adding his power to the lineup gives you a power threat that you really only kind of have with Christian Walker at first base and not really anywhere else. Yeah. And so adding Devison De Los Santos, I think it's worth a shot for 30 games, and worst case scenario, it doesn't work. That's fine. He starts next year in AAA, but give it a shot because his new swing is much better.
I like that call a lot. He's someone that I've had my eye on. Number 5 on the MLB.com top 30 prospects for the D-backs. He's a little young, 20 years old, so I don't know if he's maybe a little bit too raw. There is another guy on the AA level, playing the same position that I want to get your thought on if you have any. A little Ivan Melendez action. I feel like they're two sides of the same coin. Now, the thing with Melendez, 3 years older, 23 years old. So maybe because of that age, you feel like he's a little bit more mature, maybe a little bit more seasoned, maybe a little bit more ready for the big moment. He's a guy that has been healthy the whole year. Just looking at the stats right now, it's not like I've done any deep dives on him. Just over 900 OPS, 30 home runs. Usually those numbers look pretty good on paper. So how do you feel about maybe a potential Ivan Melendez for the same take that you just had?
So for the Hispanic Titanic, as they call him,
okay,
he's batting 258 in the last, I think since August 1st or so is when I pulled that numbers to prep for this. And I actually, spoiler alert, I actually have shares of Ivan Melendez in my big money industry dynasty league. So I'm a believer in Ivan Melendez. Now, he's played a lot of first base in college. They're playing him at third, and him and Davison De Los Santos kind of swap back and forth. It feels like Melendez probably has the higher ceiling to me, but I think that De Los Santos is the hotter hitter right now. Okay. And so that's the hard part is like both of them are having good years, and for De Los Santos, especially after July 14th. And so the question is, Melendez probably has the higher ceiling. De Los Santos is hotter at the plate right now. Which one do you do? Either way, it's two guys that are very similar. Guys that are third base or first base. We're not sure if they're going to stick or not, but massive raw power. In Melendez's case, you've seen him perform under pressure in college, part of the College World Series team and all of that. So you could do either one. You've had more time with De Los Santos in AA than Melendez, so I'd lean De Los Santos, but you could make the argument either one of them could be a candidate to try them out at third base to see if you can add that power element for the stretch run.
Yeah, and I did a podcast earlier the week just talking about like D-backs contracts. Christian Walker only has like one more year where he's arbitration controlled, and then he's going to be a free agent in like 2025, I think. So it's a real question if you want to start calling these guys up just so you could get a little look at them. Because if Christian Walker is going to be like 33 years old entering free agency, it's a question of how much you want to pay him, how long you want to pay him, and maybe you let him walk in free agency if you believe in the De Los Santos and the Melendez of the world to come in and be your two corner infielders for you at both first base and third base. So D-backs at least have options on the left side of the infield because we know that's their weakest spot right now when you look at their team offensively. I'm looking at third base. I'm looking at shortstop. Perdomo, of course, all-star shortstop this season. But long-term, do I think he's an all-star level player? Probably not. Probably just got hot for a couple months there. But I do think, considering where we are at with Perdomo in his career, I'm just shocked that he's still a major leaguer at this point. Actually has turned into like a slightly above average major leaguer as well. So Perdomo has really taken his development to the next level and has looked really good this season for the D-backs, which is surprising because considering entering this year, I didn't have a lot of Perdomo stock probably. But Lindsay, do you want to say something real quick?
I was gonna say, like, the big thing that stunned me when I pulled all the numbers is the starting shortstops had a higher slugging percentage than the starting third baseman. Like, that's what blew my mind because shortstop, like, it's one of those few positions you can understand making the trade-off of power for good defense. But third base isn't a position where you can do that. It's like left field, third base, first base. Those are places, catcher oftentimes, those are places you need guys who can mash. And this team hasn't necessarily had that, and that's, I feel like, has been the missing component to having a complete roster. So call up these two guys. Let's do it.
Yeah, and Longo's got some power, but it's like, how much do you really want to play him at third base when he's like near 40 years old, right? He's probably a better DH because he does have legit pop still, but is he mobile?
He has one of the highest hard hit rates on the team, but the issue is he also has, something like 63 strikeouts in 61 games and injury issues. And so, like,
a lot of injuries,
rotate him through, DH him sometimes, save his legs for when you need him, but bring up one of these youngsters to play every day, let him rotate in and obviously DH and stuff. You make the lineup a lot better.
Yeah, call-up time for the D-backs. Big takeaway from this podcast. Lawlar, De Los Santos, Melendez, call them up, and let's throw them on the left side of the infield. Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. Where can the listeners find you online?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. The show's account is at Locked On Farm. If you have questions, send them to us. We do those mailbags every single Monday.
Please follow Lindsay on YouTube, on streaming, all platforms, and on social media, please. Until next time, Lindsay, dose.